Hey guys, welcome back. And today I just want to share some of my Bible study from this week. Now, I have been reading through my Bible. Been reading through from Genesis to Revelation, and I just moved into the story of Esther. And if you're not familiar with the story of Esther, essentially, a Jewish girl. Many of the Jews at the time have been taken away into captivity, and so there's a remnant here, and Esther is part of that remnant. This is at the time of King Xerxes. His given name is Ahasuerus. I pray I pronounced that right. Okay, but essentially King Xerxes, and so she is living under his authority in his kingdom, which spans from India to Ethiopia. Right? And his wife, Queen Vashti, starts to act a fool. She ends up being dethroned as queen. And he's like, I need a new queen. And Esther ends up being the new queen. Okay, so that's a brief overview of like the story of Esther. Esther is a Jew. The king doesn't know this, but then one of the king's guys is like, "Hey, I don't like the Jews. Let's get rid of all of them." And Esther has to make a choice: does she stay silent about her heritage, or does she open up about her heritage to the king in order to save her people? And she does open up to the king, and she does eventually save her people. Okay. So in any event, I'm in chapter 2, guys. And so this is the New King James Version, my Hebrew and Greek study Bible. I've already worn it out, and I love it. It's a gift to myself. So what I try to do in my Bible studies is say, God, what lesson do you have for me to learn in this particular reading, whatever I'm reading, whether I'm reading one chapter, multiple chapters, or a partial chapter? Like, what do I have to learn that I can use in my life? And so this week was chapter 1 of the book of Esther, and the king dethrones Queen Vashti. Now, it says here that Vashti was beautiful. Okay, Vashti, let me see if I can find it. Of course, my pages skip. So the king wanted to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. So that is Esther chapter 1, verse 11. She was beautiful to behold. The king is holding a feast for the kingdom. He has called in princes from around his kingdom and other officials. And so all the men are together in one place, the women are together in another place. Queen Vashti is hosting the women, the king is hosting the men, and he is happy. This is like a 6-month festival and celebration, and we're getting to the end of the celebration, and the king is like, y'all got to see my wife. She is so beautiful. Tells the servants, go bring my wife. Tell her to get all gussied up for me. So I want to show her off to all the men that are there in the kingdom. And Vashti gets the message, okay? And she says, but Queen Vashti, verse 12, Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command brought by his eunuchs. Therefore, the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. So can you imagine, if y'all are married, your husband is like, y'all gotta see my wife. She is so amazing. I know y'all got amazing wives, but let me tell y'all about mine. She is boom, 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 boom. Hey, babe, come here. And you like, I ain't going to you. Who you calling? Like, and that's essentially what Vashti did. Vashti had a position of power. She had a high position in the land, but she did not have the highest position. That belonged to her husband, who was king, But she had position. She had power, and to some degree, at least over the women, she had some authority. But what she also had was an ugly attitude, and she had pride and arrogance. And that, even though she might have been physically beautiful on the outside, it was her arrogance, her pride, and her flat out disrespect of her husband that made her ugly. And he was like, hold up. So, the king was like, this is not good. So he called in some of his advisors, and let me see. Verse 13, then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for this was the king's manner towards all who knew law and justice, those closest to him, being Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, princes of Persia and Media, who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom. What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to the law, because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus brought to her by the eunuchs? That's verse 14 and 15. So the king was like, she did not obey my command. What should we do? He sought counsel. He didn't just, in his anger, he was like, what should we do? Then one of his counselors was like, yo, if we allow her to go unpunished, that will set a bad precedent in the kingdom, where wives will be emboldened to dishonor and disrespect their husbands, and it will bring chaos to our kingdom, and we can't have that. And so the king was like, you know what? You're right. So she ends up losing her position as queen. And so I remember when I was reading this the other day, I was like, wow, that's intense. She had everything. She had everything that she wanted, that she could have wanted, but she didn't have the kingship, So she forgot her position. While she held a high position in the land, she was not the king of the land, and she was under him, and she did not respect the fact that her husband had authority over her, and she looked at him as if they were equals, and she found out real quick that that was not the case. So where in my character am I being prideful, dishonoring, or disrespectful to my husband, who God has put as a place of authority over me, And so that is just something that I'm like, ooh, let me make sure, not that I'm trying to be dethroned, but like, ladies, that's real. Like, that is, men need respect, That is just like a core piece of who they are. And so to come at your spouse like Vashti did, like we can sometimes do, like I can sometimes do, and with a heart of either I'm better than you, or just a flat out heart of dishonor and disrespect, that is going to stir up some fury on the inside, just like what happened to the king in the story. So how can I, as a wife, not be like Vashti? Not be like Vashti. And so it's like right after I was reading this, I I accused my husband of doing something trivial. Like, we were like, oh, Lisa, why is your sock in my drawer? Take your little stinky sock, you know? And then I come back like 20 minutes later and I was like, is that the sock I just threw out my door? And my husband's like, mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, sorry, babe. You know, like, even though it was something trivial and we got a chance to laugh it off, like, I was like, babe, I'm sorry because I did not pay attention. That was not yours, that was mine, you know. And please forgive me for even coming at you sideways like that. Like, and he was like, yes, I forgive you. And we kind of laughed it off. But I was like, wow, you literally just read about this lady who is all up in herself, you know, being disrespectful to her husband, and then you go and you do your little thing. And so I was like, wow, okay, God, got it. Let me keep that in mind. Let me keep myself, you know, in check in that regard. And so it's something that has been in the back of my mind. Like, I'm looking at the character of one wife, Vashti, and then we look at the character of Esther, because by chapter 2, the king has searched the land for young maidens, and he has pulled in a collection of young ladies into his harem. I don't know what the right word for it would be. And Esther stands out. Why does Esther stand out? Because he pulled in all the beautiful. So we know she's beautiful, you know, because the king collected all the beautiful maidens. But why does she stand out? And as you read through, you realize that, yes, she was beautiful, but Esther was obedient. Esther was pleasant to be around. She was humble, and she did not seek to impress the king with material wealth that was already his. She just simply sought to be obedient, you know, and not in a negative way, but in a way that is rooted in humility. And because of that, the favor of the head eunuch who oversaw all the women rested on her. And then as she went to see the king and spend her time with the king, he favored her as well, because he saw, I believe, in her a difference between the pridefulness of Vashti and the humility of Esther. And I was like, wow, that is a complete difference between the two women. Her pride, Vashti's pride, crumbled her. She lost everything. But Esther's humility and obedience elevated her. And I was like, you know what, God, I want to be a wife that's elevated. What areas in my life do I need to work on my humility? What areas do I need to work on my obedience? Because I can be Vashti very easily. Honey, can you just, man, okay, I know, that's in me. You know, so that's something that I have to work through. And so I have just been enjoying all of that. Now, I'm going to read. This is chapter 2, verse 15. Now when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, to go into the king, she requested nothing. But when Haggai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the women, advised, okay, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. Down to 17. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. She had grace, she had favor, she had humility, she had obedience. And that elevated her from just a simple maiden to queen. So what in my life and what in your life, are you pouring into yourself, pouring into your spirit that can help, have that favor or blessing be poured upon you? Like, what areas do you have that you need to grow in your humility, grow in your grace, grow in your obedience, and let go of the pride, let go of the disrespect and the dishonor that might be permeating through you. Ooh, y'all. Anyway, so that is just what I've been reading. I am up to Esther chapter 2, verse 19, and I'm excited to read, to go through this. And I've been enjoying my Bible readings, guys. I've just been having a blast. I have been wanting a Hebrew and Greek study Bible for probably 20 years, and I finally bought it last year. So this is 1 year in, and I'm only at Esther after just over a year, but I have been really taking my time and just enjoying the process and enjoying learning from God's word. I will get a real bookmark eventually, but so that's it, guys. So my challenge to you is to evaluate your character, evaluate your heart, let go of the nasties, embrace the beautiful qualities that God desires for us all, not just husbands and wives, but this is particularly about wives. And be blessed, y'all. All right? Y'all know the drill. We'll see you in the next video. Okay? Bye.